If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to the latest installment of Bailey's Books. Today we've got a wide variety of things to talk about. And our first item is going to be Sword and Sorcery. Double-Edged Sword and Sorcery, number 1 actually, published by Brackenbury Books 2024. So this book is actually a collection of 2 Sword and Sorcery novellas with some very cool art. And if nothing else, at least go and check the book out for the art, because the art's just phenomenal. The first novella of this book is called The Walls of Shira Yulun by Dariel R.A. Quiogue. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. The last name is spelled Quiogue. Anyway, this first novella starts with the main character hiding out in the wasteland, being hounded by an evil sorcerer, of course. Now, let me pause here and say that magic in this world is fairly rare and powerful. Think more like Game of Thrones and the average D&D campaign. So, obviously, this is very bad for him. Though he is considered a barbarian whose primary interest is sacking cities, he heads to the city to save his beloved mentor, who has been threatened by the sorcerer, but unwillingly becomes entangled with the city politics. From there, the story is non-stop battle action. The author does a great job with the relationship between the main character and his mentor, but spends a little time developing the other characters, really. Which, I think that's pretty much par for the course for Sword and Sorcery. I should mention this story is set on the border of a fantastical Mongolia and China, somewhere in the pre-Middle Ages. I really enjoyed the setting, especially the references to the Three Kingdoms China, which is just like a special interest of mine. It seems to me that the author also did his due diligence in research. Nothing about the technology of the time seems out of place to me. On the other hand, I'm not really an expert of that time, so it sounded pretty real to me. And I don't really want to go into any more detail here because I don't want to ruin the story for you. So the second novella is called Waste Flowers, and it's by Bryn Hammond. I enjoyed this story quite a lot, and being that this novella also takes place about the same time period as Walls of Shira Yulun, it shows you how vastly different 2 stories within the same subgenre with the same setting can be. Waste Flowers came with a much bigger dose of fantasy, starting with the main characters fighting undead. The majority of the story revolves around a group of bandits hired to protect a merchant caravan trying to find Genghis Khan, which I've spent my whole life pronouncing Genghis Khan, but the author is an academic specializing in Mongolian history, so I'll go with her pronunciation, unless it's supposed to be a fantasy pronunciation? I don't know. Anyway, 2 members of the bandit group are lovers, and the story mostly follows them. One is a member of the nomad tribes that were tied together by Genghis Khan, and the other comes from an area outlying China, if I'm understanding the geography correctly. So, while Mongolia outlies China, this is like closer into China, but still outside of it. This story is imaginative, full of action and intrigue, and even moves into the surreal at times. The characters fight a myriad of undead creatures and even consort with a god of death. Overall, I'd highly recommend this set of novellas to anyone interested in Sword and Sorcery, the Mongols, and exploring less-known writers. Before I move on, not too long ago, I saw Brackenbury is releasing 4 more Sword and Sorcery novellas, 2 of which follow the characters in the novellas I just discussed. So, if that all sounds interesting to you, go and check those out too. Okay, next up we have How to Surf a Hurricane by Todd Medema, published by Atmosphere Press 2025. And you all will probably know at this point that Todd actually joined us for a solarpunk column about electric vehicles and battery technology. And he is an engineer who works on batteries, actually. Genre-wise, this one couldn't be any more different from Double-Edged Sword and Sorcery. This is a near-future hard science fiction novel. Additionally, this could be categorized as solarpunk, as I just said. This novel starts by following a well-to-do youngish man named Morrow, whose father and boss has put the kibosh on the experimental batteries he has been engineering. Morrow becomes upset because not only are the batteries much better than any that have been invented previously, but the family company owns the rights to them and is planning to destroy them. So, for a little context, Morrow's family is rich and scheming and owns a giant natural gas company. From that moment on, Morrow decides he needs to break from the family to save his batteries, but more importantly, help the world. He decides he will have to steal them back. At this point, we are introduced to the other characters in the book, including a blue-collar worker trying to help his father beat cancer, a woman and her daughter who've made a living teaching sailing and competing in extreme sports, and an engineer who has spent her career designing cargo ships. As the story goes on, we are introduced to the dangerous world of hurricane surfing, as well as a vision of what the future could be. This novel tackles some of the arguments against cleaner energy, for example, the use of natural gas as a bridge fuel between coal and oil and renewable energies. For some, the story may be a little rambling, though in no way as bad as anything written by Tolkien. That said, everything has a purpose, and there are no real extraneous scenes. The characters are developed, but did seem a little rushed to me. But they are enjoyable, and don't really follow that hard SF stereotype of completely flat characters. So pick this one up if you are interested in climate fiction, multiple points of view, and actual, really real science. Next we have Vigilance by Alan Stroud, published by Flame Tree Press 2024, again in the science fiction column. This is the 8th and final story in the Fractal series. This full-length novel finishes out Stroud's epic space opera, and let me tell you, it ends with the most satisfyingly messy ending ever. Let me explain before you interpret that negatively. If you've been listening to these columns, then you know there's a galaxy-spanning range of plot points in this series. Everything from spies, AIs, Martian colonists, soldiers, mutants, aliens, and psychics are among the varying characters. So it should be no surprise that I was wondering how he would pull it all together. Without spoilers, the answer is he doesn't. I mean, the main plot is mostly resolved, but there are threads left at varying stages of completion. This isn't the first time threads have gone unresolved in novels, obviously. Especially in very long and complicated series, it can happen. Authors and editors forget minor details between books, and excited, observant fans notice. This is different, though, and it explains the idea behind the Fractal series title. What Stroud has done is represent a huge science fiction plot in a way that reflects how huge historical events play out in real, ordinary people's lives. People are not physically capable of being at various inflection points in a worldwide, or in this case, system-wide historical event. And so Stroud gives us the main story in the novels and different inflection points throughout the novellas. In doing so, some of those stories are buried in the larger story. While I have read huge series that cover a variety of points of view, like The Expanse, for example, none have quite represented this idea so accurately. However, if you stay observant, Stroud does offer you glimpses into how things tie together, even when it isn't stated plainly. All in all, this book continues all the themes I've mentioned in previous reviews. Politics, action, and philosophy are all fair game. Pick this series up if you love expansive stories, multiple viewpoints, and messy endings. Okay, next up we have Sub-Liminal by Alastair Miles, published by Shadow Dragon Press 2025. Again, in the science fiction category. Sub-Liminal starts with a crew of astronauts arriving at a faraway planet outside our solar system to begin colonizing a new world. But, as the book tagline says, they are the first to boldly go, and the last bloody arrive. During the crew's 100-year trek, humans invent close-to-light speed engines with the help of advanced AIs and get there far ahead of the astronauts. They've been there for so long, they have settled in and created their own culture led by an AI with questionable intentions. Sub-Liminal is a very fun space opera comedy in the vein of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In fact, I posted a photo of this book stating that I was reading it, and someone mentioned that they thought this entire book is based on a one-liner in Hitchhiker's Guide. I haven't read Hitchhiker's Guide in about 20 years, so I couldn't confirm that personally, but this book certainly vacillates toward the silly and the absurd. The characters are solid, they are believable and have their own silly quirks, adding to the fun of the story. The plot follows several of the astronauts as they try to come to grips with being outdated and in a strange culture. It also comments on a number of current social issues, foremost being the internet. Miles does keep things moving along, making use of quite a few science fiction tropes, poking fun at them, as the tropes are in turn used to poke fun at everything else. I recommend this one to folks who enjoy absurdity, AI villains, and Idiocracy, the movie. Okay, last one for the column. Our final book is a horror novel called Unseen Gods by Justin Holley, published by Flametree Press 2025. I previously reviewed Holley's novel Hellwig's Keep back in November of 2024. Like Hellwig's Keep, this novel follows paranormal investigators, but this time they are checking out a haunted cabin, not a haunted asteroid mine. The investigators decide to check out the old cabin after the main character comes into possession of a diary recounting the disappearance of a group of hunters, including the writer himself. Of course, when the investigators get there, bad things happen. By the way, the investigators include 2 chaos magicians. I've never heard of this concept before, but it was interesting. Even though the idea of a haunted cabin in the woods is far from new, and in fact, I believe I reviewed another book with a similar premise not too long ago, it was a fast and enjoyable read. I liked it better than Hellwig's Keep, honestly, because I wasn't constantly critiquing the science fiction aspects that were really window dressing in that novel. This book read very much like a movie in which we watch a group of friends be decimated by some unholy thing that no one really understands. One thing I really enjoyed about it is that even though the author centers the evil in Christian terms, several of the characters consider it from different religious perspectives, with 2 actively trying to understand which religious perspectives is best to understand it. I do wish Holley would have explored that aspect a little more deeply, but I'm fairly happy it was there at all. I do get tired of everything being centered from a Christian perspective with no consideration of other worldviews. Anyway, it was an enjoyable, if blood-soaked horror novel that I finished in a few days. Pick this one up if you are interested in chaos magic, unexplainable evil forces, and lots of blood. Alright, and that is all for this column. If you like what we're doing, remember to share us with your friends. You can always check out our Ko-fi or Patreon accounts as well. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll see you again soon.